So I guess the way I'd like to start talking about the iPhone X and the brand new iPhone XS and the XR is by mentioning my long-term impression and review of the iPhone X, 256 gigabyte, which I bought roughly a year ago, give or take a few days. So, first of all, what I like about the iPhone X is its size in the hand. One of the problems that I had with the larger iPhone 8 and larger iPhone 7 is the fact that they cause my hand to cramp. Now, at first, a lot of people were complaining, oh, why is this thing so much smaller and this, that, and the other. But I gave it a chance and I found that I really, really enjoyed the size of the iPhone X more than I enjoyed the iPhone 7, the iPhone 6 Plus, and the 7 Plus. I enjoyed the iPhone X definitely more than both of those phones. Again, the size just caused my hands to cramp. Now, is that going to be the same for everybody? Probably not. The main reason why I've continued to purchase iPhones every single year, getting the newest phone, is specifically because of the camera. Now, last year, the iPhone X and the iPhone 8 Plus brought motion stabilization along with 4K video at 60 frames per second. Now, most of the videos that I've made, I've shot with the 4K 60 frame per second setting. Even though most people do not have 4K displays that can actually see exactly all that I shot, most people are still using 720p displays. Anybody who's not using one of those is probably using a 1080p display, but the vast majority of this country is still using SDTV, and by that I mean they're not using the high definition displays beyond 720p. So I've been using 4K kind of like a future proof for my videos when people finally do start getting 4K monitors and 4K televisions, because now the price of a 4K television has plummeted in price from what used to be like $4,000 and $5,000 down to $1,000 for a 70-inch television. I made a video, I think 2 weeks ago. Target had a 4K Vizio that was marked down from the normal $999 down to $799. So it was basically $800 marked down from $200 from $1,000. So the 4K 60 frame per second camera is the main reason why I love my iPhone X. The rest of the phone is pretty much the same, I would say, as iPhone 7 Plus and 8 Plus. Now, granted, there's waterproofing and there's minor improvements like the camera flash is amber and this, that, and other. But the main reason why I continue to buy iPhones is specifically for the camera. Now, I promised myself that I wasn't going to upgrade again this year unless they released a 512 gigabyte phone. Now, I'm going to get to that in a minute. But what I must say, what I absolutely have to say, first of all, is that I'm very disappointed with Apple's Face ID technology. Now, bottom line is this. The Touch ID, which was basically the fingerprint scanner on the home button, was far faster to open the phone than Face ID is. Now, most phones that I've used recently, especially these Android phones, the LG Stylo 4 that I bought my mother for her birthday, the Galaxy J6, I believe, that I bought my girlfriend while I was in the Philippines. Both of those phones not only had some type of face recognition, but they also had a touch sensor. I see no reason why Apple should have ever gotten rid of that touch sensor. The 7 Plus had a perfect touch sensor that wasn't a full button. It felt like a button, but it wasn't a button, but it was tuned to feel like a button. And that's what I like so much about it. The iPhone 7 Plus and the 8 Plus solved the issue entirely. The iPhone X brought forth no home button, and it brought forth no Touch ID. Touch ID was so much more efficient that you could open the phone before you even got it out of your pocket. With iPhone X, the Face ID it's absolutely not accurate. For example, if I'm looking at my phone and I have my eyes closed, it won't open up. But if I put on a pair of sunglasses, it will open up. However, sometimes when I'm wearing my sunglasses and I pick up the phone, it may open up, it may not open up. It's absolutely not accurate. The only time Touch touch ID access, the only time that was not accurate is if my fingers were wet. If my fingers were wet, yes, that's when you have some issue with the capacitance. But all you really had to do is wipe your fingers on a cloth, and then you were right back able to touch it and open it up. As far as I'm concerned, Face ID and Touch ID should both be in these phones. And the Android phones, I have to give it to them. Most of the Android makers have, for the most part, they've gotten it right by doing exactly that. Now, battery life is good on the iPhone X, but I believe that battery life is actually better on the iPhone 8 Plus because there was more space or whatever it was. I believe that the battery life was actually better on the iPhone 8 Plus when it was released, which led a lot of people to turn in their iPhone X's and trade back in for the iPhone 8 Plus, because ultimately, these people who think that this competition for Apple are 100% wrong. There are 1,000 or 1,000,000, whatever, Android phone makers out there, but none of them can run iOS. And when you run iOS and you get used to using iOS and its apps over Android, most people, I believe, who use iOS prefer iOS. Now, there's some Android people out there who do very specific enthusiast things with their phones. I'm not one of those people, so I could care less what they're doing. Overclocking a phone doesn't make sense to me. Certain things just don't make sense to me that they're able to do. But listen, if that's what they like, that's what they like. I'm in the Apple iOS ecosystem. I like the fact that when I do buy another phone, I can transfer 100% of everything that I was doing on my iPhone X over to the next phone, whether I choose an iPhone XR or I choose an iPhone XS. I like that. That's what I like. However, there are certain aspects of the iPhone X that are a bit annoying. And the main one is the fact that it didn't have a home button, didn't have Face ID and Touch ID. And the other thing that I kind of didn't like was the fact that it didn't have a 128 gigabyte memory capacity possibility. As far as I'm concerned, when you have a phone that is shooting 4K 60 frames per second video, and every single minute of video is hitting you with 300 megabytes or something like that, there's no reason why you should not have a 128 gigabyte as the starting capacity and then move on to 256 and then 512. See, some people have always asked, oh, well, why do you need 256 gigabytes? Well, it's because I shoot YouTube videos. When I went to Korea, when I went to Philippines, when I went to Dubai, I'm shooting YouTube videos. I'm shooting travelogues. And if you're going to shoot a travelogue with 4K 60 frames per second, you absolutely must have the largest storage capacity you want. Now, the issue that I have is that my iPhone 7 was 256 gigabytes. And the thing about it is, that was okay back then when you were only shooting 1080p or you were shooting 4K 30 frame per second video. The problem is when they increased the video capacities, what ended up happening was you start running out of space when you get ready to finalize an iMovie. So ultimately, I love the phone, and the only reason why I'd upgrade this year is for 512 gigabytes. Well, Apple has basically today on 9/12/2018, the day after 9/11, the trillion-dollar company Apple has decided to hit us with their new products. So let's go right here to iPhone and look at the brand new iPhone XS. Now, before I even get started, to tell you the truth, now I love iPhone. You know that I've made a video every single time that I've purchased a new iPhone, which was basically every single year for the past, since 2007. You know that. My problem is I really feel that Apple jumped the shark when they made the iPhone 6 Plus. When that phone came out and we could finally get a big screened iPhone, which they had been neglecting to give us for such a long time, because the iPhone 5, when you look back on the iPhone 5 and you see how ridiculously small the iPhone 5 is compared to what we're using now, I personally felt that they really jumped the shark with the 6. Now, I knew that they were always going to give us faster CPUs. I knew they were always going to give us better cameras. I knew they were always going to give us other features. Like, for instance, the most important feature I think that they added since the iPhone 6 wasn't the Force Touch. My thing was making it waterproof when they made the iPhone 7 up to a certain depth. I think that was the most important thing that they did since the 6. Other than that, you've basically been getting the same phone for the most part. It's faster CPU, more memory, so forth and so on. But the bottom line is, even with the faster CPU and more memory, unless you were doing very specific things with the phone, like shooting high definition video or finalizing gigantic movies like I'm doing, unless you were doing very, very specific things, there really wasn't that much difference between the iPhone 6 Plus's 1080p 60 frames per second and the 7 or the 8 when it got 4K 60 frames per second. So basically, really, granted, they can keep refining old features, but I really feel that in a way they kind of jumped the shark. So this right here is their layout. The iPhone, now they're still selling iPhone 7s, which I find interesting. I'm surprised they didn't retire the 7, but they're selling 7s, 8s, XRs, and XSs. So instead of just selling the X, Apple decided to make what's called the XS and the XR. So basically, if you watch the keynote today, a lot of the stuff that we were hearing about what they were planning to make as far as new products were concerned, usually all that Apple clickbait that these fake-ass journalists do in order to get clicks and in order to get quick money on the internet, these fake news outlets, what they usually do is they talk about all the possible new features and they talk about all of the possible things that Apple could be bringing out in order just to get you to click on the ad. Now, what they weren't right about was there being a slimmer flood camera, because as you can see, the XR and the XS, and now you can tell obviously this is the XS because the XS is now the same size as the 8 Plus was, except now you can see that they've trimmed back the bezels on the bottom because now, again, there's no home button, which honestly, I really preferred having a home button simply because of that Touch ID. I don't know why Apple's phasing that out. They should have kept it. But as you can see, it's the same size roughly as the 8. It probably weighs either a little bit less or a little bit more. But what got me was the prices for these fucking things. So when you go to view pricing, there's the XR, which comes with multiple color choices, kind of like the 5C did when they started making different colored backs. Now, me personally, I don't see the point in all the different colors because the problem is you're going to put this thing in some kind of protective case, and for the most part, nobody's even going to be able to see the original color that the phone was. They could sell all of these things with just regular silver, and if they were just regular silver, all you would do is just get yourself a different color case, and your different color case would make it a different color when you're out in the street or whatever. So me personally, I don't really see the difference in, I really don't see the difference in it. But okay, I had to get rid of that phone. Sorry about that. So anyway, so that's the new phone, 5.8 inches and 6.5 inches. And the sad thing about it is these fucking things cost so much now that they're trying to put you on a goddamn lease option or a payment plan for a fucking phone. Last year, they were talking a lot of smack about, oh, God, Apple's selling a $1,000 phone. Now, mind you, if you bought one of those top-end Galaxies, it would have been the same $999. But Apple was selling the cheaper phone was $999. It was the 64 gigabyte. There was no 128 gigabyte, which means that there was a gap in price up to the 256 that I bought. This fucking thing was $1,250 plus with tax. It was $1,250 with tax, shipping, whatever. It was $1,250, the phone that I'm holding now. So let's say you're getting one of these things. You get it from AT&T, right? They only got 3 choices. They got silver, they got space gray, they got gold. Now look, once again, this thing is $1,099. So you're basically paying $100 more for the bigger screen for the 64 gigabyte. And they want $54 a month for that shit. Now, the 256 is $1,249, which means that this thing ends where the phone that I'm holding right now, or I'm sorry, this one begins where the phone that I'm holding right now ended. So with my taxes and all that stuff, this phone is $1,251 and some cents. But this shit right here, 512 gigabytes, they're selling these phones now for $1,449. So I'm in New York State, so you figure with my taxes, you figure on every $1,000 there's an $80 of tax. So you're figuring $80 plus another $32. Right there, you're paying over $130 in tax for this thing, which basically brings the price of this This thing, what is that? $14.49 plus, let's say, $130. This thing is $1,579. So they want $1,579 for this thing. So for me to get the 512 gigabyte XS, I'd have to pay $1,500 plus. $1,579. I still can't believe that number. Now, granted, people will buy it, but there's no way in hell that that thing is going to move as fast as they expect. I refuse to believe that most people are seriously going to upgrade to that. I think most people will probably stick with the 256. Now, because I use my iPhone for everything, specifically doing all my video recordings, like when I go to other countries and whatnot, okay, 512 is kind of what I absolutely need. So the logical thing for me to do is to sell my iPhone X and to move to an XS. But I'm not doing it just to get the bigger phone. I'm doing it because I absolutely need the space. So that iPhone XS Max is damn near $1,600 for basically what amounts to the same phone that I'm holding now, plus maybe some upgrades, because they say they have a new Bionic 12 chip and all that stuff. But for the most part, this phone works just fine. My problem, again, is the fact that I need more storage. And that's basically it. Like when I was in South Korea, I'd taken a lot of pictures, I'd taken a lot of video. And basically, I just needed more storage. But $1,600 for a phone, that's pretty goddamn ridiculous. Like, I've never seen anything cost that much unless it was one of those solid gold phones from Vertu, or unless it was something with like a Hermes leather wrap being sold at Neiman Marcus. I ain't never seen they've pushed this thing to $1,600. And what gets me also is the fact that all of these damn fake news journalists, I have to be the only person who bothered to mention the fact that there's no 128 gigabyte here. Why is there no 128 gigabyte last year, and why isn't there one now? This phone should not start at 64 gigabytes. This phone right here should start at 128 gigabytes. The camera takes pictures that are so big, and the camera takes videos that are so large, that 64 gigabytes is going to do nothing but force you into upgrading to something else. Because the problem is, 64 gigabytes just isn't enough to deal with the camera on this phone. This phone, first of all, I have about 30 gigabytes worth of personal documents already. I have about 30 gigabytes that already take up 30 out of 256. So 30 out of 256 leaves me with a little less than 225 gigabytes, a little bit less because that's how it's formatted. But it leaves me a little less than 225 gigabytes worth of video recording. So what I found is that allows me to get about 4 hours worth of 4K footage. Now, if I press it hard enough, I can probably get 5 hours. But if I get the 512, I'll easily be able to make a comfortable video that is roughly 8 hours and still have enough space to finalize the video on the phone using iMovie, which is, again, that's the only reason why I'm considering getting that new upgrade. That's the only reason. Now, back to the main page. They also, as you can see, have the XR. So they have the XR coming because I guess they knew that the XS was not going to move in high enough numbers for them. So what they did was they're trying to talk up this liquid Retina display, and I'll have to see it in person before I can pass judgment. But that really doesn't, none of this stuff, the display doesn't interest me. The camera speeds doesn't interest me. As far as I'm concerned, the iPhone X does everything it needs to do perfectly. But what I need is that 512 gigabyte. So storage is really the only thing that I really feel that I absolutely need. So this comes in different colors: red, gold, white, rose gold, I believe that is, black, and then I think they call this coral or something, or blue. I don't know if they call this blue, but one of these is coral. I forget which one is coral. They call it coral. So these things, which one? Oh, this is coral. I thought that was rose gold based on the color. So they're just saying, oh yeah, it's going to give you better color matching and all that shit. But guess what? When you're taking photos and you're uploading pictures of your ass to Facebook and Twitter, pictures of your ugly ass face with those stupid emojis and shit plastered all over you, it's like true color and all that doesn't really matter. But in any event, they're making these so that people who, you know, are unable to afford spending fucking $1,600 on a phone or $1,000 on a phone, that the top one of these ends at about $1,000. So let's say I pick the blue one right there, and I want to look for the 256 gigabyte. The 256 gigabyte is $899. So I have every pretty much belief that this XR is the equivalent, if not better, than the current phone that I have, which is the 256 gigabyte X. However, what they've done is, instead of it being $1,250 with tax, it's $256 for $899. So that is kind of better. But what they don't offer is, they do not offer the 512 gigabyte on this level. What they do offer is, because you're a cheap ass and you can't afford it, and, you know, more likely you're one of these negligent ass parents buying these damn ridiculously expensive phones for your underperforming, underachieving children who shouldn't have phones like this in school. Well, they have a 64 gigabyte for $749, and then they have for 128 gigabyte for $800. So that's just where it is. So basically what they're saying is, okay, we've reduced the price of the 256, but we're charging you $100 more if you get the big screen. So that's basically what they talked about today at the Apple event. Now, they also did what they should have fucking done a long time ago, and they're making the Apple Watch slightly larger. And they're, for the most part, it's the same thing that you would have bought if you bought the watch, the Apple Watch 4. But instead of having that big ugly ass red dot, now what they've done is they've made it a little red cap that doesn't make the whole thing look like a dot. And then what they've also done is they've added an EKG in this thing, which I think is actually kind of interesting, because you know, I've had relatives and everything who, their health companies absolutely will cover some of this new technology, because their health companies can use it to help monitor them. So in some cases, health insurance absolutely will cover these things. So yeah, this thing is slightly bigger, so I definitely think I'm going to consider getting one of these. So I'm pretty sure this thing's probably about $400 again. I doubt that they'd probably sell it for more than that. But it has a new look, and I like the new design. So with the new design, they've made more space on the thing, so that, yeah, granted, you get better temperature design, you get timer space and all that. I really like the way this looks. I've never actually had a problem with the Apple Watch after the 2, because the 2 gave you plenty of battery power. So I'm really happy to see that. Now it says view pricing. View pricing. Let's see. So the Apple Watch Series 4, GPS or GPS plus cellular. Me personally, I see no reason to have the cellular app. I really see no reason to have it, because, to tell you the truth, talking on my wrist is something I really don't want to do, and I also just sure as fuck don't want to have to pay them extra money for that feature. I just don't think I should have to pay them extra to have phone calls coming in. Like for instance, you see this turkey who's playing basketball right here with this black basketball, and he's got a phone call coming in on his wrist. How is he supposed to answer the phone while he's about to get his ass kicked by this dude over here who's going to take that ball and dunk on him? It doesn't make any damn sense. First of all, you really don't want to be playing with one of these things on the court, because you don't want to run the risk of damaging the face. You take stuff like this off when you're playing on the court. Like, over the summer, I was in the pool in the Philippines, and I was actually timing my laps using the lap counter, and it was pretty accurate. It seemed like it was working pretty well. But what I noticed doesn't work so well is the stand indicator, because the problem is sometimes this thing gets confused as to whether or not you're standing, and I've gotten very odd standing results sometimes. Sometimes it's very inaccurate, which you could kind of understand, because it all depends how you hold your hand. It all depends how you move. So basically, I foresee myself getting a new large Series 4 GPS, probably without the, what is it called? Without the cellular. I don't think I need the cellular. Without the cellular, this thing is $399. They have a couple of other colors, and I'm guessing with cellular, fucking $499. It's easy to see why Apple is a $1 trillion company. As far as I'm concerned, and I argued this case, I believe Apple basically, oh, look at this shit, fucking $700. And then they got one for $8. And it's like, hey, guess what? We can make this thing as expensive as we think you'll pay for it. But the cellular models, as you can see, have the red line, the thin red line on them. But the regular models have a black line. Now, Does it matter? Does it really matter? Personally, I don't see the point in buying the cellular because, as we noticed with the Apple Watch 3, using the cell phone on this watch cut its battery time down considerably. My iPhone is always on me. The only times I've ever had it off is in areas where I'm not allowed to take either a phone or a watch. Like, for instance, when I went to the Supreme Court, they didn't allow you to take either one into the Supreme Court chambers. So I had to take off my phone and my watch and leave it, in a different room when I went to the Supreme Court. So because of that, I really don't see the point in getting the cellular model. I think the $399 black, like me personally, this is what I use right now. I use the standard black band. I'm not into all that flashy shit like this. I'm just not. I like it just standard. And as far as I'm concerned, this works perfectly. And as you can see, I have this rubberized case to protect the screen from all sides. Like, let's say you're moving stuff and you don't want to accidentally rip your screen out, which happened to me with my Apple Watch 1. Well, I like it like this. So me personally, what I'm probably going to do is I'll sell my Apple Watch, and then I'll probably get an Apple Watch 4, and then I'll wait like a year and a half or something. I'll wait 2 years, and I'll probably get the next one. Because what they'll probably do is, just to make sure that they keep their profits high, they'll keep using this exact same case, and they'll keep just upgrading the internals. And that'll probably be it. And this way they keep making maximum profit off of a product they're selling over and over and over. But that's how Apple does it, and that's the reason why they're $1 trillion as a company. They have $1 trillion. They're $1 trillion company, and all these other shitty ass Android makers aren't, because Apple has figured something out. They are, as far as I'm concerned, Apple's a monopoly. They make something that you can't get anywhere else, and then they make it so that nobody else can sell what they sell. If Android phones had the ability to use iOS, you can bet that Android phones would ditch that Android shit and they'd be on iOS. But they have no choice whatsoever but to keep using the same shitty Android as the next phone. So a Razer phone, Galaxy Note, LG Stylo, all them shits look alike, and they're boring. And ultimately, that's the reason why Apple keeps kicking their ass. And you could say, oh, yeah, well, the Android market is more market share. Yeah, but that's because there's a million companies making Android phones, but there's only one Apple. And as long as there's only one Apple, that level of exclusivity is where I like to be. So again, to you parents, stop buying your useless, underperforming, underachieving children stuff like this, because as far as I'm concerned, wherever I go, I should be one of the only people with stuff like this. I should not see them with it. And unless they, are doing really great in school, and unless they're bringing home like straight A, in fact, you should make them get a job. Yeah, make them get a job, make them work for it. Because I already know I'm not going to see any kids with that excess no time soon, not unless welfare checks are being used to buy phones like that. So do me a favor, just make sure that you get the one of them shitty ass Android phones that's like $200, like what is it, the Stylo 4. You get them like $50, $40, whatever, nobody cares. But I should never see them with shit like this. I should never see children, little kids, I should never see them with stuff like this. I shouldn't see it. So please make sure you get them Android stuff and stop trying to bite the apple.